Welcome back to Air Quality Matters and part 2 of my conversation with Nathan Wood. The question I had for you about Farmwood was, are you exclusively ventilation now as a company? Is that pretty much all you do?
Pretty much. We do a bit of M&E, mechanical electrical works as well. We look after some local schools. We used to have our own plumbing and gas engineers as well. But because our work was diversifying more towards vent, it wasn't sort of a mix. We actually lost those team members because they just wanted to do what they were trained to do. Fortunately, they've gone and set up other businesses and we now subcontract to them and we've still got a very good relationship. But yes, it's day in, day out ventilation works. And we've managed amazingly to stay completely independent as well, which in the last, as you say, 2 years has become really, really difficult because people want to align with you. I love the associations and the way that we've built a reputation with them. That's really, really positive. But there's a lot of people out there that have been set up off the back of having an association with a manufacturer. Nothing wrong with that.
What's the pros and cons of doing that? I mean, I'm guessing if you're specialising, if you're a one-trick pony, i.e. ventilation, it must be helpful, right, to have a big brand behind you, helping you with work and supply funnels.
Yeah, they're quite. The manufacturers are quite risk averse, though. With direct experience in that sense, we offer a lot of bespoke work. So we carry out a lot of air handling unit flat packs and rebuilds. The manufacturers who may not offer that service, we carry that out and we take that warranty on and that ownership on for that product. There's nothing wrong with being associated with manufacturers. I'm not saying that because it's good to know that there is that relationship there. It's just for us, I didn't want to be restricted by terms and conditions of a contract whereby I couldn't work on somebody else's equipment. So we actually work for a ventilation manufacturer who's got a contract for a housing association, but as a brand, they can't be seen to take somebody else's equipment out to put theirs in if it's still working. So we're offered the opportunity to go in there and service and maintain it on their behalf. So there's lots of different avenues and niche works that we do for different people in different ways. And I do really feel for the manufacturers because so many of them want to do more. And I get that. They've all got their little IAQ groups and the people that are learning and coming up through the ranks. And there's certainly members of similar associations to ourselves. It's just that unless something's specified, they're not going to put that funding towards it to generate it through, which is why I was really happy with the new Part F, and then we've got the new British standards, Part 1, Part 2, can't wait to come out, residential. So there are standards for them to look towards to developing their products, but it's just, you do need that specialism, but you want that impartiality at the same time, and I think that's what we can offer.
Yeah, you want the freedom to be able to call out a manufacturer if you need to, that it's not delivering what it should, or that it's involved in something that isn't going to work without risking that business. So Nathan, so how did you end up actually in this industry yourself? You weren't straight into the family business, were you?
No, it's quite an interesting one, really, and it's completely diverse. So where I live on the Isle of Sheppey, there was unfortunately closed down, a massive steel recycling plant, and it was one of the main places for employment, really, where we lived. I'd always had an interest in, I wouldn't say engineering, in what I call tinkering. Certainly when I was young, I always had that micro screwdriver set that my mum would try and hide, but I just loved taking things apart. They'd never go back together. You know, I'd done the washing machine the other day, and this is no word of a lie. I didn't have a bolt left over, but I had a washer. Turned out it was a really important washer because something vibrated like hell when we spun it up. But yeah, I was always tinkering with stuff, and I think also growing up with my parents being in sort of scrap yards, getting parts for cars, you know, back in the day when you could work on your car yourself without needing programming. So I've always been in and around that sort of thing. And in the early days, I thought I was going to be a mechanic, car mechanic. You know, that had a real interest for me, and I enjoyed what I was doing. So I stayed on at college and done an NVQ in engineering to sort of get some decent qualifications behind me to then sort of go forward for a job. But back then, that's when you did have 30, 40, 50 people out there going for a job, you know, all wanting the same job. So I couldn't get a job. I'm just like, okay. My mum was like, well, if you can't get a job, we'll support you. Go to college, get some higher qualifications, and you know maybe springboard a bit. So I went to Canterbury College and completed a national diploma in engineering, 2 years. Again, loved it, and it was a mixture of hands-on as well, which is really really good. They didn't have to do that where we was, but the engineering team were your time served true engineers that had sort of retired and then gone into education. Went back to get a job. Suddenly I'm overqualified, and I'm like, how the hell? You know, what's going on? So I saw in the local paper the steel mill was advertising for apprentices, and I was like, that's going back on myself, surely. But I thought I've got nothing to lose. Went for the interview, but because of my qualifications, I was able to leapfrog a few of the requirements. Not fast track. I still had to do the foundations. So I was a 18-year-old working alongside sort of 16-year-olds, school leavers, in what I can only describe, it's the best way of describing it, the original film Mad Max, Mel Gibson, where there's the Thunderdome. That was the steel mill. Sparks flying, the most polluted place on earth. What I know about air pollution, I should never have stepped foot in the place. But the true engineering mentors, in every sense of the word that we had there, time served, true engineers, they were amazing. You know, we would be put with each guy in a different department for 3 months, and you would learn your skill. You know, I back then I could measure really, really accurately. You know, and the equipment that we needed to repair, we actually if we couldn't get it quick enough, we'd manufacture it. You know, if there was you're talking about a 90-ton pot of molten metal being transferred across to a ladle, and the crane would break down. And I was part of the crane crew when I qualified. You know, the call would go, you'd be up, and you'd have the worst fire resistant overalls, like Nan's itchy blanket all around you, hard hat. You know, and as soon as you step foot in the place, you're beading with sweat. The dust would stick to you. You'd try and wear a face mask, but they were pointless because they would just get blocked up so quickly. You're on the top of this crane trying to fix a gearbox with 90 tons of molten metal slowly going off underneath you. And you'd have to link things out and move it across proper heavy industry, but a real brotherhood at the same time. And when it closed, it was a huge blow to the area and the industry as a whole. That said, knowing what I know now, it's had huge benefits for the area in terms of its outdoor air quality, thus indoor air quality. So I was an engineer. I did qualify. Everybody was out of a job, and my father had just started up Farmwood 9 months before, and I was like, Dad, I'm out of a job. You know, what have you got? But it was still just him at that time, and there wasn't enough work for me to join him. So I went from one extreme to another. I went from probably the dirtiest place on earth in steel and recycling to food processing. So I was looking after a pie and sausage factory's machinery that was probably about 9 months. And again, it was yin and yang, uber clean, constantly cleaning your hands, different clothes for this area, different clothes for that area. Your tools had to be of a certain type, so they could be picked up. Nothing could be plastic, metal detecting. And I learned everything from German automation of geared systems through to the hydraulic press for the steak and kidney pie machine and everything else. And there was lovely points to it. I mean, you go into the bakery and it'd be lovely and smell great and everything else. And you'd be into the sausage side. That'd be freezing, you know, really, really cold and horrible. But again, I think the diverse nature of heavy steel industry to food processing probably helped me a lot when I merged across into what was initially, sorry, Dad, the boring world of ventilation back then. It was. I thought I'd be desoldering these little circuit boards and changing fans and balancing them and everything else. And it's not. It was just That's broke. Get rid of that. Here's the new one from the manufacturer. Plug that in, do your report, and then drive home. So in the early days, I didn't think I had a future in ventilation at all. It was probably a bit of a, I'll drop in with Dad for a bit, maybe have an easy year, and then something could come along and I'll get back into it. But I soon realised, constantly meeting different people, visiting different places, getting to see the UK. You know, I mean, I remember the first time I drove into London, my dad warned me about these things called speed cameras. I'd never seen a speed camera before, when I drove into London. It's changed since, but yeah, it was an eye opener. But I certainly didn't think 22 years later I'd be sat here and absolutely loving what I do.
And it's still a family business?
Yes, 100%. So my father's recently retired as CEO, but not retired from the business. He's now our special projects advisor, because he's got years up here that we need to tin open out and get out sometimes. And he still likes to keep his hand in. He's not involved in the day-to-day at all, but he's very, very happy, and that was important to me. My sister's come on board as a director now. She came to us as health and safety and procurement. So she's trained up in that, and she completely owns that side of it as well. She's getting involved in associations and the national occupational standards and really pushing that agenda. So with her by my side, we're a really, really good team. Really good team.
What kind of area are you covering now with Farmwood? Is it fairly localized? How far north do you go, and
Well,
west,
we're
and so
based
on?
in Kent, so we're for those other viewers not local. So we're about an hour from London. I'd love more local works. We've actually got in with a few local councils more recently, which is great. The majority of our works is in London, in and around London, in the home counties. But with the right projects, we will go nationally. We've had guys up in Scotland doing some flat pack and rebuilds. Our core area is sort of the southeast, but for us, the southeast is as far as Norwich, across to Birmingham, down to sort of Poole and Dorset. That's our core area. But because we've been going so long, we do know some really, really good people, subcontractors, and there's a really good vibe, I think, since COVID as well, in terms of supporting other businesses. It's not just about us; it's about building everybody else around with you. So we've got loads of sort of gentlemen's agreements where we share the workload around. I don't like the word subcontractor; it takes away that personability. They are genuinely friends that we work with.
You were an apprentice when you started out. I know you take on apprenticeships within Farmwood. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of apprenticeships and what your hopes are for that side of the industry.
Yeah, yeah. I'm extremely lucky to have been an apprentice and gone through that learner journey. Um, the Steelworks actually sold off the training centre prior to its demise, and it's amazing that it's still in operation this day. So the two of the people that trained me are still training my guys now. It's an extremely well-run organisation. It's called IPS International, and they are true engineering. They're a true engineering centre. It's not about a profit-making scheme. The guys go there for 3 6-week block releases, and I love them to do. We don't do milling and turning and all of that stuff, but knowing that they go through the same foundation as myself, when they get near qualifying, when their eyes start lighting up and looking at the bigger world and thinking money's coming in now, I love nothing more than just rocking up on site with them and just running through a few questions and seeing whether or not they're still engaged and taking on board their training. But without question, apprenticeships and apprentices have been the lifeblood of our growth. And without them, we certainly wouldn't be in the position we are now. An association in the UK that's been going over 100 years, their very, very first minuted notes spoke about skill shortages. And here we are today, still talking about skill shortages. And certainly, we're pretty much always advertising for people to join us, but it's through the organic nature of an apprentice coming in that you can mould them into the person and that engineer mindset that you need them to be. It's we've found through experience, it's a little bit more difficult when people have been in an industry and done something like electrical, mechanical, plumbing, fabrication, that can turn their hand, but they've already got that mindset of how they've done things in the past. Whereas an apprentice, you can mould to the Farmwood way, if you like. I mean, we also guarantee them a job if they're successful. We're not in the realms of taking on young kids, abusing the cheap labour, if you like, and then at the end of it going, congratulations, you've passed, go find your way in the world. And in fact, we've got one of our apprentices, Evan. He was my apprentice for a little bit as well. He's now engineering supervisor, owns his job 100%. There's actually a guy that trained at the Steelworks as well before that went. He's come over to us now. So again, we've got that way. We all know how we tick, if you like. It's that engineering thought process, and it's developing that through the business. And I think they all know when they join us, if I'm successful, I've got a job. And there's guys at this business that have been here 12, 13 years, and they're now supervisors. So I can, work up that chain and have a career. And I look to them as well, saying, you're the next gen, whichever gen we're on now. You're the TikTokers and the social medias and the AI. You should be telling me what to do. I shouldn't be the one coming back to you and discussing ways in which you can drive the business forward, because they're the next gen. What do you want? What do you see from it? So it's really good to be able to be in a position to allow them time to go to the conferences and to learn from other people, because that's quite a daunting area. But without question, there's nothing I love more than seeing a spotty little Herbert walk through the door, not being able to give you eye contact, not being able to take instruction very well, or to follow things through, constantly questioning themselves, to coming up to you and going, right, I've been to site and I've done this report today, and that's not right. What do we need to do about that? Should I contact them direct, or do you want to take that on? And I just fall back in my chair and I was like, bingo, done it. Being with them, meeting the client, and you seeing them holding the conversation, making good eye contact, handshake at the start. We even talk about the lift conversation. Right, you've just qualified as a technician. You've met your site contacts. You're in a lift. What do you say? How do you break that barrier down between being that person in the new lad, and you're with a time served guy that's thinking, what's this kid going to teach me about something I don't know? And that's just to come back as well, that mind's eye of what an engineer looks like. You've only got to drive through London and you pass construction sites. You're near a construction site before you even see one, because guys are head to toe, dusty and dirty, sat outside a fast food outlet, high-vis jackets all twisted up, hard hat on the floor with ear defenders. To say to a young lad, do you fancy a career in that? It's not really the mindset that you want. So we spend a lot of time with the engineers explaining to them, if you're doing a dirty job, you've got your little suit that your disposable suit you can wear, and you need to make sure that you dust yourselves down. And we've given all of the guys clothes brushes, wet wipes, keep yourself clean, extra uniform. If your PPE's dirty, we'll take care of it. Take a fresh one. Is your hard hat all screwed up and got drawing on the side of it, or do you look presentable? We should be a professional body. We're professional people. Why is it that we seem to be quite happy just to sort of be treated in a poor way, or looked at in a lower class than what we actually are? I think there's a lot that the industry needs to change on that.
There's 2 points you touched on there. One, I think, is the inherent value and joy you get as an employer, seeing the development of employees and growth. That's very undervalued, and I think anybody that employs people appreciates that. That's you get a lot back as an employer, seeing people develop and grow personally.
Definitely.
And see them start families and get their mortgages and grow and build through the business. That's enormous value. But also there's this inherent value in being an engineer, and there's an incredible shortage of engineers.
True.
European wide, globally. So it's a career somebody should want to start. There are all sorts of levels of engineers. You can go the academic route, you can go the apprenticeship route. It should be the kind of career that mums and dads want their kids to go into, because there's enormous opportunities. even within our small field of ventilation and air quality, it's such a diverse industry that there's a lifetime of career opportunity in any number of directions. Yet we don't seem to be getting it right, Nathan, do we? We don't seem to be able to place highly enough the value in engineering and the value in apprenticeship schemes. Why is that, do you think, at its core? What is stopping mums and dads steering their kids into a career of engineering? Even if they don't have the capability to go the academic route to start with, going the way of an engineering apprenticeship?
It's a great question. It's one that I've sat in many a conference and listened to, and there's never been one solid answer. I do think there's a massive shift about to happen, though, in the years to come. And I think it's going to be driven by AI. And I think people that used to look to do office works, IT works, anything that involves a laptop, anything that involves repetition or something that can be modeled and replicated by AI or certainly machine learning. And there was a great, I recall a great image on the side of a construction site on the hoarding of the scaffolding saying, ChatGPT, finish this building, And there's a few people I follow on social media that say in the years to come, the uber rich and wealthy will be the plumbers, will be the engineers, will be the mechanics. Because yes, you can program a robot to build a car. Yes, you can have a robot diagnose a car. But the intricacies of being able to physically repair that car in an organic way, I don't think will go. How we attract our engineers is still through that relationship route with existing people. We're unable to attract. I've gone to local schools. I've spoken at schools. We've done events. I've been invited to another one next year as well. And it's almost like if you're not good enough academically, well, you just go into engineering, just go into, it's almost like when I talk to Europeans, or people in Germany, if you're an engineer in Germany, you're like a doctor, but an engineer. Do you know what I mean? It carries that gravitas. Oh, wow. Far too many people in the UK are called engineers. That's why, quite positively, we put in a structure whereby the apprentices have a stepping stone, so they become technician level 1, technician level 2. Then there's 2 or 3 tiers in the engineer side as well. That's not just on a pay scale; that's on their abilities as well. And there's some good money to be made in engineering, or electrical engineering or mechanics. There's a massive, in my opinion, there is a massive divide between what people consider a career path and what people want to do. Because back in my local school, they had a local engineering centre, and it was a fantastic place. That's gone. The local college, they had an engineering centre. That's now been reduced to car mechanics. Now, that's just as important. But I then look at IPS International, amazing training centre where the likes of Coca-Cola apprentices go and GlaxoSmithKline and places like that. They put in like 20 or 30 apprentices a year. I'm aware that some of those organisations only take on the top performers, which I don't blame them, but everybody else has had that foundation going forward. How you attract people in, I think there's a new angle as well in terms of health outcomes and how they can have a positive change on the world, because the whole ESG nature about engineering is massively coming to the forefront. Sustainability is a big driver for the industry as a whole. And I think people that start to look into that, certainly my boys and some of the work that's coming back from school is all about sustainability, recycling, and almost they're not saying it, the words, but it's this circular economy and how we develop that. So I think AI will have a huge impact on it. Not yet, but I think going forward, and certainly schools and colleges should, and hopefully with my opportunity to talk to them, we can change that message going forward. But We certainly haven't got a stream of kids knocking on the door saying, can we come and work for you? We hear this is really cool and we can help people's health. That's not there yet, but hopefully that will change.
Yeah. We need to make engineering a little bit more sexy, Nathan. That's the thing. That's not you and I, but
Definitely not. No.
I think there's some opportunities there, and systemically to help us keep apprentices as well. I mean, it's incredibly hard to sustain an apprentice
Yeah.
through
I mean,
into full
why,
employment, isn't it?
if you're a young lad or lady, I'd love a female apprentice as well. We've tried and we've failed over the years for that one. You've got a mobile phone bill, you've probably got a bit of rent to pay at home and everything else. Why would you want to be an apprentice and earn less than minimum wage when you can go and work at a big supermarket warehouse and earn significantly more an hour and just walk in, check in, do your bit, check out and go home? Why wouldn't you do that? I'd probably do that now if I had my time again.
Yeah.
But it's, for us, I mean, as an organisation, as a business, we pay more than what we should, and we incentivise and everything else. But for a lot of apprentices out there that work for some of the smaller companies and the bigger companies, there's no guarantee at the end of a job at the end of their training. So why put yourself through it? You know?
And you can't be what you can't see, so we need to make it more visible for kids that actually that there is an exciting career and a chance to earn decent money in engineering and particularly within
see
the
the
built
world.
environment. Yeah. Like a nursing qualification. You know, if you're an engineer who can work on renewables, heat pumps, say something sexy and exciting at the moment for people.
Yeah,
you're an engineer in domestic heat pumps. You've got a ticket to work anywhere in the world right now.
And
You know,
the
like
progression doesn't stop with us as a business. So my first apprentice, Mark Bond, was your stereotypical spotty little oik, braces, crazy hair, mostly late in the mornings. The amount of times I woke his mum and dad up trying to get him in the van in the morning. Qualified as an engineer, brilliant engineer. Fell in love, came in, asked for a meeting. I was like, you're not having a penny more out of me, fella. And he said, I'm leaving, I'm emigrating. My partner's South African. I'm going to go out to South Africa, start a life out there. Went in to a job whereby he was building porta cabins into portable generators that are like dropped into the middle of nowhere, connected up, loads of problems with power outages and stuff like that. He then moved into design. He then moved into sales, and now he's in charge of certain countries to promote and talk about the business and the corporate side of it and everything else. He has flown. So from humble beginnings, he's made it, and we're still in contact, and I love what he does. I love what it's about, and just knowing that I played a small part in that sort of nurturing process, and he's gone. It's amazing. I love talking about Mark. He's a really nice bloke as well, and he's done really, really well for himself. We've had other people that have joined us, and they've not been successful. You know, truth be told, you know, they have left and gone on to other things. Fortunately, still in engineering. You know, so it's no golden ticket, but certainly for the right aptitude, you know, you can go places.
Brilliant. Tell me a little bit about BESA, because you're doing a lot with them at the moment, including heading up the indoor air quality group. And I know you have a more formal position with them now as well. Explain a little bit for people that don't know that organisation, what it does and how you came to get involved with them, particularly on the indoor air quality side of things.
So BESA is the Building Engineering Services Association. And for a lot of businesses like ours, you wanted to carry that badge on the back of your van. You know, it was this sort of, you had your trust mark, you had your construction line, your CHAS, your ISOs, and then it was the HVAC Association, then BNES, and then it became BESA. And we've always been a member. And it wasn't until I got more involved in the business, I was like, what are we paying this membership for? What's this? Oh, they have regional meetings. You can go along and get involved. I'm going to go see what this is about. We've been paying this for years and not really done much with it. And I know that they sort of worked on standards and we get this little booklet through and everything else, but again, never really got involved. And I went along to the local regional meeting and they were talking about fan call units and stuff like that. And I spoke to one of the guys I can't remember his name. I spoke to the guy at the end. It was like, as an SME, you're sort of asking for us to get involved. I've always thought about getting involved. We've spent all of this money for all of these years. And at that time, they said, we know we do business advice, we do mentoring and this, that, and the other. And I put my name down. And back then, I arranged to meet a chap called David Fries. And David Fries is now the CEO of BESA. I think that's the right title. Might have got it wrong. The top man, anyway. Met with him, explained everything that Farmwood did. And at the time, we'd just done a DIY SOS Big Builds, which is a TV program. I'm sure there's similar ones around the world whereby either a family's doing an extension and somebody might fall sick or become ill and they've not been able to finish it off. And it's a real sort of pull at your heartstrings, do good, people come together, build things, make things, and have better outcomes. And we worked with a local project where they demolished the house, rebuilt it. We fitted an MVHR system with some really basic air quality monitoring. Family of really poorly children, life-limiting issues. And the long story short is it had a profound change on their lives. The parents changed the way that they viewed air quality and air pollution. One of the children, Curtis, he went from being hospitalised every changing of the seasons with pneumonia to never, in the 6 odd years since, he's been back to hospital, but never through pneumonia through the change of the seasons because we're taking control of the air quality within the environment. So we've become friends with the family and everything since. A huge one. We could probably take over a whole podcast talking about them. So I mentioned this to David, and he was just like, we've got a conference coming up in a few months. You really should preach about what you're doing because no one else is doing what you're doing. And I was like, yeah, no problem. And then walked away thinking, shit, I've never, ever done public speaking. How's this going to go? So before I knew it, I was there in my poorly fitting suit and my shoes that were hurting me because I never really dressed up for that sort of thing, standing in front of a packed room of 100 people all staring at you, the white eyes, big gulp, went for it, presented it really poorly. And everyone clapped at the end, like more than sort of usual. And they was coming up and engaging and saying, this is great. And then a little while after that, I was invited to a few round tables where people were talking about this thing called IAQ. And I found that myself and one or two others would just take it over and everybody else would be listening. And I think I realised through doing the project with the DRSOS and the Ratcliffe family and having children of a similar age and knowing firsthand that the health outcomes and the positivity that comes with that, I wanted to talk about it more. I wanted to do more in it. And it's developed into a true passion. And I never understood when people loved their job. Like, what? Live to work, work to live and everything else. But it truly has. And now the work that I'm doing with BESA is more legacy focused because I understand how long things do take to change. So I was asked to become their indoor air quality chairman, and it was a new group that they were setting up, sitting underneath the ventilation and hygiene groups. And I sort of had a bit of imposter syndrome and said, well, why me? Why not all of these other bigger businesses and corporates and everything else? And they said, because you're just a voice without any sway from anybody else. You're quite happy to go, sorry, can you say that again? There's lots of abbreviations in our world, Simon. I'm sure you appreciate that. What do you mean by that one? Okay. I did have one rule, and this is a rule that we still stick to this day, which is the NA rule. And Simon's part of this group as well. So this is quite good. I can say it now. If Simon wasn't and he had asked to be, this would have been a bit embarrassing. But it's no arseholes allowed, basically. I don't want anybody coming in with an agenda, pushy product or anything else. And it's worked quite well. And I think because we're open and honest about it, people know that when they come in to get involved, they are getting involved to make positive change. And in the 4 years that I've been chairman, working with Mitsubishi Electric, who sponsor these guides, and the core group of people, we've produced a basic how-to guide on indoor air quality, a 3-parter, from the basics on the layman's level of what indoor air quality is, what you can do about it, all the way through to a risk assessment and mitigations at the end. I was really quite guarded about the last guide because they wanted solutions, and I'm very adverse to the sort of snake oil sales, and there are lots of products out there that might be doing good things, but they might be doing harmful things at the same time. So that was a difficult rope to tread. And then more recently, in line, perfectly timed really, with the housing associations here in the UK and the housing ombudsman that's raising the issues around mould and damp in people's homes, which was highlighted by the tragic loss of young Awab Ishak up in Rochdale, whereby his living conditions were a direct reason for his passing. There was terrible mould and damp, poor administration, and lots of other factors involved in that. But unfortunately, like most places, it takes a tragedy for people to pay attention. So it was never more timely that the guide was put out there. And they're all completely free to download, free to use, free to put your letterhead on, to share them widely. And that was vital for us. So big thanks to the people that sponsored that and got involved with their time. So 8 years ago, when I sort of went on this warpath of learning more about air quality and pollutants and everything else, this name come up, which was Rosamund Adu Kissy Deborah. And at that stage, on Twitter, or X now, I was learning about these Mums for Lungs, which has become a big association now, and all these sort of almost breakout regional meetings that were going on where people were complaining about air quality. Sadiq Khan was raising the profile of clean air in schools. And I just started going on to these little, almost networking events where people would generally have a bit of a moan and someone would take some notes and try and get action from it. And I went along to one in Camden, and I remember seeing Rosamund stand there, and she explained how her daughter Ella developed asthma and ultimately died through an asthma attack. But it was the causes around her asthma. So she lived on a busy road, or near a busy road on the South Circular in London, a pollution hotspot, certainly an air quality management area. She walked along that road to get to school. Her school was near the place as well. So her whole youth was surrounded by air pollution. And yes, she did have one of the worst cases of asthma. No two questions about it. Ultimately, it was the air pollution in and around her home and where she lived that killed her. And that was the outcome of the coroner's reports. And the strength, passion, and will to do good from the loss of Ella through her mum, her campaigning, and her associations, ellaroberta.org, is truly astounding. And I can't put enough emphasis on that. So when I first saw her, I'm writing down a name. How on earth can I approach her and go, "Hi, Rosamund, really sorry to hear about Ella. I work in ventilation and air quality. Here's my card." How could I do that? How could I broach that? So I left it, just kept an eye on things, what was going on. And then one time we was actually at it was the London Mayor's office, and she was leaving after another amazing talk with I know it's a friend of hers now. And as I walked past, I just thought, now's my time. They seem in a jovial mood. Just went past and said, "Really sorry to interrupt, ladies. Rosamund, loved your speech. I've been watching you for a few years now. I'd love to learn more. Can I buy you a coffee one day?" And she just belly laughed, turned to her friend and went, "Check this young guy out. I'm old enough to be your mum," or something like that she come out with. Anyway, she took my card. I sort of made a cheeky comment back and left. And then 2 days later, the phone goes and it's Rosamund. And she's like, "Right, when you buy me this coffee?" Met with her and literally said what I just said to you. I've watched you for a long time. I think that we can work really well together. I'm not looking at making business from this, but sort of to raise the profile. I work with this, and this. And she never really understood the relationship between outdoor air quality and indoor air quality. Because a lot of her campaigning in the early days was about the ULEZ, about closing roads near schools and diverting traffic and everything else. So it was a bit of a sort of light bulb moment for her when I explained about ventilation and air quality. And I couldn't believe it when she was like, "Right, get me engaged, get me involved." And she started coming along to association meetings and she started talking about indoor air when I was at the meetings. And we set up a WhatsApp group and we started just sort of filtering information and meetings and everything else. And I think it was only when her case made it through to the High Court, I think it was, and the Prevention of Future Deaths report came out about Ella. And the main point, if I may, from that, is that the recommendation from the coroner was for health practitioners to take an active interest in where people live, work, and play, and their health outcomes. Because had somebody taken that interest in Ella, rather than prescribing her medication, asthma pumps, nebulizers, and everything else, and steroids and whatnot, would she have benefited from air purification, heat recovery, good ventilation, indoor air quality monitoring? Without question, it would have improved things. Whether she would still be here today, I cannot answer that question, but it would have alleviated her issues. And Rosamond is more than happy for anybody to reference her, to talk to her, to reach out, to get involved, to question her. She is an absolute powerhouse, and I completely admire everything about the woman and her family. And I've just got to check here. She's just recently picked up a CBE from our new King Charles here in the UK as well, which is an amazing double-edged sword, if you like. You know, she shouldn't have needed to do what she has done to get that, but what recognition for such an amazing, strong woman.
And the best recognition of all she could hope for is a change in regulations and legislation, isn't it?
Yeah, so the Ella's law, as it's being put through, she's still fighting for that. There's maybe you could link this, Simon, in some way. She's got the petition going out there as well. Be great to get that pushed through. The good thing is that now her profile has been raised through the associations. They're actively looking at working with her and sponsoring her and supporting her as well. So, yeah, it's I can't say enough. She's bloody amazing, Ros. I don't think I could do it had I lost my child. I don't know, but yeah, she deserves all the credit she gets.
Well, talk about purpose when it comes to indoor air quality and air quality in general. I think that epitomizes it really. As we finish up, Nathan, often a lot of my conversations are with people involved in regulations and legislation and academia. But we don't get to talk to people at the coalface very often, people that are on the ground trying to deliver good outcomes day to day. What should manufacturers be doing to support contractors more and to facilitate them to get better outcomes, do you think? Because they're your main supply chain. They're the people that are delivering the products and often generating the business in this sector. But it can be a difficult relationship at times with manufacturers, can't it? What could they be doing in general, do you think, to help that, to facilitate better outcomes on the ground?
Whenever a product fails, the first thing people do is they see that badge, the manufacturer's badge on the unit. It's a X, it's a Y. You know, I work with all of them, most of them. They offer training. I say training in quite a loose sense. Depending on the manufacturer, you could go to your local electrical wholesaler and buy an MVHR unit over the counter with a load of ducting, probably a load of flexible ducting as well. Install it. I think that if manufacturers required a competency card number, almost a log of who's bought it, where it's going, capture some initial data capture for where it's going, that traceability will have a good impact on it as well. And I'd fully support that. It would cause us a problem. I'd fully support it.
Some care about the final outcome of a product, basically, rather than, because it's very difficult. And I was saying this to Peter Rickaby last week, that it's very difficult for manufacturers to build in an inherent care about outcomes when you're selling a 40 quid fan over the counter of a trade counter, right? There's not a lot of built-in outcome performance in that pricing model. So on one hand, on one side of the industry, you've got big manufacturers talking about good air quality outcomes from MVHR units and from MEV units and mechanical ventilation. And then on the other side of the same industry, you've got a lot of money at stake selling bucket priced intermittent fans, and fans we know are causing a lot of the problems in the marketplace. So it's a difficult one to navigate, but I get the sense from what you're saying that it's a little bit more focus on outcomes than just product sales would be interesting. And perhaps something that's coming down the road, whether they like it or not anyway, because whether you like it or not, within a decade, you're going to be judged by the ongoing performance of the products you sell anyway. So you're going to have to get your head around it and work with companies like yourself to deliver outcomes. Otherwise, the questions are going to get quite awkward at some point. What's your hope for the next kind of 5 to 10 years?
We must change. There's no option. We need to change. I mean, the Building Safety Act has delivered a huge problem for lots of contractors and associations to bend and flex and get their head around the changes that are being implemented for the right reasons. But we've also got our net zero targets, that keep getting pushed back. 2030, 2050, whichever you look at. With the skill shortage we've got, you've only got to look in any other article, and then people are saying about heat pumps work. No, they don't work. Yes, they do work. And then you've got the sort of hybrids of heat pumps stroke MVHRs in units and everything else. Technology is evolving. I think certain agile businesses need to evolve with that. There's training available. More training should become available. And certainly the movement that I'm seeing within associations, organisations, regulatory bodies, collaboration between health-conscious companies and organisations and those that are pushing regulations. It's not a case of you don't have to change. I think it's you must change. I never thought I'd be talking about a legacy at 43 years young. From what I've learned over the years, my naivety, change does take time. But I think if we are to meet these net zero targets, and we are to have a renovation wave like never before, and we need to build houses at a faster rate than we ever have done before, in a system that is pretty broken currently, I think there is hope. We can do it, but I think it's going to need open collaboration. Not just worry about your own overheads and your own bills and everything else. You need more of a friendly atmosphere around the table to make sure that things are done properly. And you just need to care. I think you need to really care and understand that it could be your auntie, your uncle, your child that's going to be living in one of these environments, working in one of these environments. And without that, due diligence, I think, is too much of a corporate word. We need sort of care and attention to come into play, I think. And as we've said all the way through this, it's more about health outcomes and people's lives that are far more important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Nathan, thanks so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you as always. That was a good 2 hours of chit chat, as ever. Absolutely flew by. Thanks so much, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Simon.